I'm going to the Holy War. I mean, incredibly excited to see BYU and Utah square off in a game against an undefeated and a one-loss school in what I think is the best rivalry now in the Big 12. You don't get this pomp and circumstance from Kansas and Kansas State, from Baylor and TCU. They're not even going to sell out Baylor and TCU as two teams that think they have Heisman caliber quarterbacks and contenders. The Holy War, these teams could be, you could flip it. You could have 0-6 and 1-5, and they would still sell the thing out. Like, this is the kind of matchup the Big 12 has missed without Texas and Oklahoma being in the conference. Not to say Utah and BYU are the same level of brand, but this is as close as it's getting with a matchup where you can wholly expect, no matter how good or bad the two teams are, for them to be there. I was there last year in Rice-Eccles. That's the famous Mark Harlan game. Wild. I thought it was one of the best atmospheres I've seen in all of college football. I've seen multiple games in LaVell Edwards. I love their in-game experience, their fan experience, the way that they, the fire dancers going into the fourth quarter. I think it's an incredible display of college football. And thanks to the friends at Explore Utah Valley and at Sundance and even BYU for reaching out and saying, hey, you want a couple tickets? Come have the full Holy War game day experience. Compare it to what you saw last year with an incredible atmosphere at Utah. JT, this is what the Big 12 needs to build more upon. This is the kind of matchup that keeps this conference relevant in college football.
There are only so many rivalries in college football, Drake, to me, that are 365. Every single day, there is a back and forth. There is a debate. Yes, like if you ask a Kansas fan what they think of Kansas State at times, they'll tell you and be candid. But literally, Utah and BYU fans get into it every single day, it feels like, Drake. And there are only so many rivalries in college football that meet that. And I do think this is one of them. I cannot wait for this game. Glad that you'll be there because I think it's going to be one heck of a game, too. Like, I feel like Utah has a very good shot to win this game. It's a big test for both of these schools, though. In some ways, neither of these teams has a super impressive win, I can say either, right? Because Utah, yeah, you beat Arizona State badly. It was still with a backup quarterback. BYU, you went on the road and beat an Arizona. I have no idea how good Arizona is. I still don't think they're very good. And we saw Iowa State throttle them recently here too. We know how bad they were last year as well. So this is a massive test for both of these schools. I love that both are ranked inside the top 25 because I do think that right now they absolutely are top 25 teams in the country. And this is the type of rivalry, the stage, everything. There's been so much build up and hype into this game too. Drake, how about the whole Keanu Tanavasa saga, right? Like that whole thing comes to a head here. You got Carson Ryan is a transfer from Utah who went to BYU. How about our best two pass rushers, John Henry Daly, Logan Fano? They also went to BYU and then transferred to Utah. A lot of these guys grew up playing high school football together. A lot of these guys were teammates going against each other their entire lives. And now they get to meet up on what is one of the best rivalries. And I do believe the best in the Big 12. This game is going to be absolutely epic. And I cannot wait for it to kick off on Saturday night.
No doubt. What makes so you've seen BYU and Utah, the Holy War, and this is less of a conversation right now about who's going to win and the rivalry itself. Are you picking at BYU or me picking at Utah or vice versa? And more about just how this is good for the Big 12. You've seen it up close and personal, as have I. What makes this game special in a way the rest of the country can't quite because like there is Alabama-Auburn, or there is a rivalry between Notre Dame and USC, right? But I just don't think people get BYU Utah on the level that they probably should try to understand it.
Yeah, I feel like just the passion runs so deep, and the fact that like you have so many guys who will go to church with people that are for Utah and then go to BYU, like you'll sit next to each other at church, and the night before you're rooting for a different game, so you get some of that friendly banter in there too. But this state, obviously too, there is a real thing of Utah against the world. I think the state as well, right? Like just Utah is not discussed as much. It's starting to be a little bit more. Utah schools are for the rest of the country, so I think in some ways you get united around that. The state pride as well too comes into play with this here. But yeah, and there obviously is the religious element to like the church being involved for BYU. You know, Utah has some church members involved too as well. So there's just a lot of connections. There's something you grow up either a Utah, you grow up a BYU fan that run very deep. I mean, Drake, I was there for the game that took place in 2021, the Charlie Brewer game. Utah lost. It was the first time BYU had beaten Utah in like 9 years. And I remember just, even though I was obviously devastated that Utah lost at the time, being a student at Utah, I was in awe of that atmosphere as BYU stormed the field, and you could not see a blade of grass, turf, whatever it is out there. It was It was epic, and I love that passion in college football, and you could just see how much it meant to all of those guys out there, too. This one does mean more. The players, the coaches will talk about, it's just about going 1-0 this week. No, this one means more. It's been circled on everyone's calendar. As soon as it gets announced, it's going to be absolutely epic, and this rivalry, because of how close a lot of these guys are, all the connections that exist in Utah, is what makes it special, Drake, and I'm just so excited, like I mentioned, for this to get underway. And in the brief time that you've been involved with this rivalry, what do you feel like makes it special and different?
I think what's so wild about it is it's the most sober rivalry in college football. You know that, and you can make jest of that and be like, okay, well, that's just a moniker to throw on the game and say, you know, this is funny and different and weird. I think weird is a word that a lot of people will use outside looking in for a rivalry like this, where it's predominantly Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints fans going against one another. And they use that moniker weird because they are ignorant of the faith, they're ignorant of the fan bases, and they believe things that aren't true. And so the way that I look at a matchup like this is you walk into a BYU-Utah game, especially, and I'm excited to see it in Provo, where not a lot of alcohol outside, no alcohol inside. And it is insane to me how some of these fan bases, we talk about a lot about how LSU or Auburn or Georgia at night have these, Tennessee at night have these intense atmospheres because of the drinking. They had all day to drink.
True.
And that's the first thing you use is, the tailgate scene, and they go get hammered, and then that's what makes, these games great. What makes BYU and Utah intense and almost eerie is every single one of these people stone cold sober. Every single person in this venue is not drinking. They are just taking in college football at its finest. And these are two teams squaring off that have a lot of, like, the moral value of these two fan bases, the moral values of these two universities, even though Utah's not explicitly religious, is something that is different than what you would get from an Auburn or get from a Georgia, or you would get from Ohio State. This is called the Holy War because there is, like you said, folks that go to church together on both sides of the aisle every Sunday in the greater Salt Lake area. And then on Saturday, they show up at the game and they are as rabid as possible just on purely loving college football and loving their team. And I don't want to make this an entire conversation about alcohol, right? But that's a big piece of that to me. It's weird in college football that a fan base could actually love its school, could actually love its team and build an atmosphere without drinking. That's just antithetical to what we built college football on for some reason. But these two do. And every time I walk into an atmosphere that's BYU or Utah, I look around and I think, how in the world are they yelling like this? How in the world are they this fierce?
I will say really quick, we both know all Utah fans aren't sober, but I do agree with what you're saying.
I mean, right. But I imagine, it's going to be, a primarily sober game with these two fan bases, right? And that's just, that's unheard of, really, in college football. And I think that's, and again, what a weird first takeaway, a weird big takeaway, but that's where I think it's so unique. There are 2 bars in Provo, I think.
I think so. I think that actually number is correct. Yeah.
I've been to one of them for sport just to see what was, what it was like. And not a lot to write home about. I believe it was Wisconsin fans a couple of years ago, drank it dry. You could possibly do that, but you're going to see two fan bases that you mentioned passion. They're passionate on their own. They're passionate in a way that's different from most college football fan bases.
Yeah, totally agree. It is something so unique to this rivalry and all the ways that tie them together. And the fact that, like you said, like so many of them, so many college football fan bases look forward to the tailgate and the pregame, some of them even more than the game itself. That is not the case in this rivalry. Everyone is locked in, bought in early, and they are fired up. They're getting in their seats as early as possible. BYU is going to be rowdy. They're going to be ready to roll. A lot of those fan bases in the other conferences are rowdy because of, like you said, what they're doing before the game. BYU is going to be rowdy because they want to do everything they possibly can to help their school win. That's what Utah fans are going to try to do as well. I'm very curious to see what the split will be in this game. I got to imagine it'll be 70-30 BYU to Utah fans, but maybe it'll be higher. Maybe it'll be 60-40. It's going to be fun. The fact that this is just a 45-minute drive basically and maybe an hour if you're doing the campus itself, like only an hour apart from the two, makes it awesome. The fact that you'll have the back and forth all week long. I always look forward to this week, and the game is absolutely going to be electric. And Drake, you're going to have a great time out there, my friend.
Super excited for it, JT, and I know you'll be glued to it. This has been and always will be this JT West yourself, Locked On Utes. Locked On. Thanks for making our shows your first listen every single day. It's Crossover with Utes and Dose Grande.